Alabama's in the playoffs. I don't think we need to really discuss the whole, did they deserve it? Did they not? They're in. I think we've all given our opinions about, who should have been that number 4 team. But I'll ask you this, because we had Jake Butt on yesterday from Michigan. When Michigan heard Alabama was going to be at number 4 spot, you knew there was a different kind of feeling than knowing that it was going to be FSU. Is Alabama the best team in this playoff?
Right now, I'm going to say no. I'm still going to lean Texas. I think Texas has close to Alabama's physicality up front on offense. I think the interior of the defensive line advantage would go with Texas right now. Now, I think the back end absolutely belongs to Alabama. That secondary is neck and neck with Georgia as the best in college football, and I don't think there's too many that can compete with those two when you come to that. But Texas is better than Alabama wide receiver. Yeah. Now, because of injuries, Bama may be a little bit deeper at running back right now, but I don't think that's a huge differential either way. And quarterback in different, I think it kind of offsets itself. Like Quinn is more capable of making a lot more throws in a lot of different ways, but Jalen obviously can break you down with his legs, and that's totally different. So, I said this going into the playoff, Aaron, when we were talking about Oregon compared to other teams and which team should get in. And the committee especially was guilty of this. None of them wanted to talk about the Texas defense. I mean, giving up around 80 yards rushing per game. They've held 5 opponents to 10 yards rushing in a game or less. And, you got a dynamic quarterback that has playmakers all over the field. Jatavian Sanders is one of the most athletic tight ends in college football. Kelvin Banks going to be a first-round draft pick at left tackle. They got some grinders up front. I think when you talk about a complete team, Texas has to be mentioned. If you're talking explosive capability, physicality, now they dealt with some quarterback injuries, so there were some games they didn't look great in. Now the most talented team, maybe with defensively combined with what they have on offense, it would be Alabama, but I'm still going to lean Texas right now.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think if Texas gets through Washington, which Washington's the one team that would concern me if I'm Texas, because of the fact that you talk about all those great stats running, against the run, the secondary has been a little bit hit or miss for Texas, and Washington has the explosive ability. Texas is the better overall team. But, man, if Michael Penix goes out there and throws 4 or 5 touchdowns, Washington might end up winning that game. I think Washington doesn't match up well against Michigan or Alabama.
Fair.
But if it does win, I think Texas does match up really well against either of the other 2 teams, depending on who win or who does win versus Michigan and Alabama. But if it is Texas and Alabama, which that's what I'm anticipating, I think Texas wins. I do think Alabama wins. And we can get into that Alabama-Michigan game. I don't know if you have anything different on that or thoughts. But if it is those 2, do we overplay it's hard to beat the same team twice in a season, especially when that game was all the way back in week 2?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're 2 different teams, and they're going to have different players that are competing, different players that are playing. As you know, like I do, we were totally different teams. I mean, hell, just from my position group standpoint on the offensive line, like we were totally different groups in week 10, 11, 12 than we were in 1, 2, and 3. So there's going to be a different comfort level all across those 2 teams. Think about Jalen Milroe. He's benched against South Florida, and even the next 2-3 games, he didn't look great. It wasn't really until LSU when he just began to skyrocket. And then November, he was a totally different guy. So you're going to probably have to deal with more design quarterback runs. Tommy Reese has done a nice job implementing those. And then Quinn Ewers, I think, will be a guy that's even more comfortable to be able to operate that offense at a different level. And I just, first off, I don't even believe in the whole it's hard to beat the same team twice. Like it's hard to beat good teams once.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a real inherent advantage either way. I mean, I think that, there's something to be said about, hey, we have the confidence because we beat you and we know we can go do that again. But there's also, we played Florida twice my senior year. We got our ass kicked both times. But, there's also that part of you get to go back and look at the things that you were close to and that you made mistakes with and say, man, we correct this. Like we got something going here. And we can have success against this part of this team by doing this. So it really does work both ways. It's just execution, but I've never really believed in that. Oh, it's hard to beat, a team twice. It's not hard to beat them twice because you're playing them a second time. It's hard to beat them twice because they're good. Yeah. Like Oregon didn't beat Washington either time because Washington's really good. It wasn't because it was the second time.
No, No, and I think for a guy like Sarkisian too, I think there is a sense of confidence though. For at least him, you bring up confidence going against Nick Saban, and we're going to get to that Nick Saban discussion against his former coaches, and obviously against Kirby too here in a couple minutes. But going to that first game, someone brought in the chat. I forgot who it was. Oh, it's Dobby. Dobby goes, "Is Michigan that good, or is the Big Ten just meh?" And if you've been on this channel with us throughout the season, you know my feelings about, say Penn State, and I haven't been really in love with them. A team that is one-sided, great defense, can't score an offense. Ohio State's super athletic and a great football team. They just didn't have the quarterback, unfortunately, this year to kind of put them over the top. The rest of the league is significantly down from the top tier. So when you look at Michigan and you look at kind of their schedule, how they got to where they are now. And I'm not going to use the word limping into the playoffs because it's hard to say a team's limping when they're 13-0, but not really playing their best ball or kind of what we thought they would be playing this time of the year. What is your view on that game and Michigan?
I think with Michigan, I would agree with you. They're not the team right now that we saw in different points of the season. I mean, number one, they have a tackle problem right now, and that's mostly due to injury. But the different players that they've either had to move or substitute with have not been the same. And you lose your best offensive lineman against Ohio State. That group has not been the same down the stretch. There were points in time, week 3, week 5, when I was watching that offensive line thinking, damn, they look better than the last two in certain areas. Like this, if they grow the way the other two did, they might end up being the best of the 3 that we've seen. And they're not that now. They're just not. The running backs are obviously dynamic. I don't know if they're as good at tight end as they've been in the previous 2 years, maybe collectively. And I think J.J. McCarthy has all the ability. It's kind of, you go back to 2018 to 2019 and people say how Joe Burrow just got so much better. He got so much better. It's like, well, he didn't really just get better. He just had different opportunities. He was provided with opportunities to do things. And I think the thing with JJ is he's not provided a whole lot of opportunities to really showcase what he can do. So there's a part of his game that we don't even really know exactly what he's capable of. But I do think he throws the ball extremely well.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about athleticism and speed matching up against that Alabama secondary, and if you have a tackle problem, I would not want to be going against Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner because they've been eating tackles up for the last half of the season, and that's going to be problematic. So I think speed and athleticism is going to be a massive difference in this game. Alabama, no matter how physical you are, no matter how much bully ball you can play, Alabama's just one of those teams that you're probably never going to go into that game and be more of that than they are. Now, they might not be the best at it in the country, but that's not how you're going to beat them. I mean, ask Georgia that. Georgia's played bully ball this year.
Well, that's the issue with Michigan the past 2 years, at least 2 years ago with Georgia. Like, you try to play the same brand as football as Georgia, but they're bigger, stronger, and faster than you are. Like,
not going to do it.
It's the same thing this game versus Alabama. Like, you're trying to play a brand of football that has been mastered by Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. Have you made that much progress in 2 years to necessarily be able to compete better than you did 2 years ago against Georgia? Like, that's
no, I don't.
worry.
Yeah, and I don't think so. And even though they don't have a Jonathan Allen or a Quinnen Williams, guys that are getting that kind of hype and notoriety, Justin Eboigbe's had a really good year. Tim Smith has had a good year. Tim Keenan's really come on in the second half of the season for Alabama on the inside of that defense. And I would say if you go back and watch 32 for Alabama's defense, diagnose things before the snap. Like, that kid is beginning to get to that level of previous Alabama inside linebackers that just, they know what's going to happen before it happens. I don't see Michigan really being able to move the ball. Can they cause some problems when they're on defense? I think probably. Just because that physicality, like I said, is going to be close. And I don't know if Alabama can just push them around. They're going to have to do other things. And they're not as dynamic at wide receiver. So Tommy Rees will have to be creative to continue to move it on offense. But defensively is where I think Alabama has a massive edge in that game.
Yeah, you're talking about two of the best defenses in the country, two offenses that are limited with some of the playmakers on the outside. But I still trust Alabama's secondary to be even more of a nuisance to Michigan than I do Michigan's defense. At least slow down, Jalen being able to create a few explosive plays. And you and I, we do our show every Tuesday on SiriusXM on the SEC channel. And someone brought this up in the chat, just the difference of Alabama to Texas from week 2. It is the turnovers. Like, if Jalen isn't turning the football over, this defense and this team is good enough, and they've proven they can win close games. Like, I trust him now more than I did beginning of the season to understand I'll take a sack or two. we'll punt the football. As long as I don't make the critical mistake, which he did versus Texas, Alabama's probably going to win that game. The rematch versus Texas, we'll see. But at least this game, as long as you don't allow Michigan to score points on defense, to me, I think they're the better football team. I think they end up winning the entire thing.